Let's bring in Maleki, a former senior U.S. Treasury official and a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Welcome back to the program, Miad. So as we just heard there from Elena's reporting, the White House is viewing this as internal debate and friction and fractures, perhaps, within Iranian leadership here between IRGC hardliners and perhaps some of those who have been more of the public face of this country right now in the regime, and that being the foreign minister and now the Speaker of Parliament. Is that how you are viewing what is happening right now? And if so, how long do you think it's going to take for one side to prevail here?
Thanks for having me. Yes, I mean that's kind of my perspective here too. But also you got to consider the rhetoric, the type of negotiation tactic that you've seen Iranian regime deploy over and over in these type of talks. They really want to show that they're not really desperate for a deal, when in fact, even you look at the numbers, economically, politically, and militarily, they're in a situation that they desperately need a deal. But it also, the reality here is they're facing a population in Iran that I would say 80 to 85% do not want this regime. They're done with it. As we saw in January, they had to kill over 40,000 of protesters to calm things just for a few days. So they have about 10 to 15%, let's say, of core supporters who've been promised victory over the US and the West and Israel for 47 years. And now they're finding themselves negotiating over the right, what they call the right to enrich or not. And if they give up under pressure and give away their nuclear enrichment, uranium enrichment program, and not get a whole lot of sanctions relief, then they're just going to lose legitimacy with that 10 to 15% core supporters that they've left with. So it makes sense at this point that they're facing a crisis that they have to settle with some kind of agreement, get some kind of sanctions relief, get this blockade lifted so they can get gasoline in, which they desperately need. They're running out of gasoline very soon if they can't import gasoline. And they can't get their oil out. They're going to have to start dropping the oil extraction, in a matter of days. So they're facing a crisis, and they need some cash to keep the economy going. But also they have to give up a nuclear enrichment program, which they've spent over $900 billion on. And it hasn't produced electricity, it hasn't produced pharmaceutical products for them. It really has turned to be useless, and they're at the point that they have to give it up.
You were on this program April 13th. I went and looked back, and you said at that time that if this blockade were to last for 2 weeks, the regime would struggle to pay salaries without petroleum revenue. And that is about a week from where we are right now for that to come to fruition. So do you think that the president can keep the pressure on with this blockade, or are we seeing the IRGC looking for some sort of workaround alternatives here, as we've seen them now confiscate and seize 2 more vessels?
Yeah, that's a timeline that I would stick with. I mean, the blockade has been very successful, although we've seen some of the Iranian tankers managing to get out, as I've seen some of the reports recently. You also see the Treasury Department coming in with some sanctions, new sanctions, round of sanctions, to putting pressure on some of the foreign purchasers of Iranian oil or shipping companies. Because listen, Iran has about 166 million barrels of oil that it managed to get out of the Persian Gulf and put on floating storage, meaning tankers, in international waters. That oil is available to the regime to sell to the Chinese buyers, and get that to generate some revenue, or get that to offset some trade with China. So the blockade is blocking that import. So if the blockade continues to stay in place, if we have a couple more weeks of pressure on the regime through the blockade, and the fact that the closure of the Strait of Hormuz by the regime was really just more pressure on the regime's own economy than any other nations. So the clock is moving really fast on their side. And they can print Iranian rial to continue to pay salaries, but that's going to continue to decline the purchasing power of the Iranians. So the clock is moving pretty fast on their end. They might have to start cutting back on salary payments soon.
So then what happens after that, Miad? Because I've heard you in a number of interviews talk about the internal friction now and debate within the country itself, given that you have some of the hardliners saying we have to stay the course, and you have others saying that this is now becoming an economic crisis for the country and for the regime. If this blockade holds for another couple of weeks, we know what will happen to Western countries. We know what will happen to oil prices. They will likely continue to rise. What happens internally within Iran? What is it that will finally get the IRGC and the hardliners to crack?
Well, I think, first of all, I think they're all hardliners. I wouldn't submit to the whole argument of there's some of them are more hardliners, some of them are less hardliners.
Understandable,
all believe
right.
in the same, right? So, but at this point, they're really just, the clock is ticking much faster for them economically, and they have no leverage really left other than this closure of the Strait of Hormuz, once again, which is hurting their economy more than any other economies. And they're going to have to agree to some kind of a deal at this point. Otherwise, they're going to go back to, if there are no airstrikes or no campaigns, they're going to have to deal with a domestic population that are facing a crisis, an economic crisis. And the internet has been shut down. Iranians are not able to run little tiny businesses that they have been relying on. The e-commerce is completely collapsed. So it's really, they've reached a point that is very unique in the history of US and Iran conflict, that the Iranian regime is going to have to make a decision to give up part of its enrichment program or the entire program, and not for a whole lot of sanctions relief, and stay in power and deal with the domestic population that is just done with this government, or continue the course. And very soon you're going to see, if the IRGC Basij militia are not getting their salaries, then it's highly possible that they're just the mid-level, low-level militants or IRGC members are just not going to be willing to go on a street and kill more demonstrators or protesters, Iranians on the street. So that's the point. You're going to see frictions and defections in the Iranian regime. I think they're facing that already. There's a mistrust between regime officials. They can't come to a decision. That process has already started.
How much does it confuse the internal debate there, given that we have yet to hear from the supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei?
I think that's probably one of the major problems they're having internally. The supreme leader is going to have to stay in hiding, so he can't communicate well. We don't really know Mujtaba Khamenei's views, whether they're harsher than Khamenei or he's willing to show more flexibility. At the same time, he's lost majority members of his immediate family, so he's psychologically he's probably very hurt. But he can't communicate with IRGC commanders. The politicians who are running these negotiations, they probably have completely different views. Some of them might not look at the economic numbers. Some of them might think that they can keep going for another few weeks and get a better deal. So it's very obvious if you look at the Iranian prints and news outlets that sometimes they manage to see, because again, the internet has been shut down. There's definitely some frictions. There's disagreements between the political figures that are in charge right now. And at some point, someone's going to have to make a decision on behalf of the rest, and then that's going to trigger additional internal conflict between them.
So just to conclude here, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You're saying that if this blockade holds for another couple of weeks, you think there's a high likelihood that we could start to see defections from the Basij, from the IRGC military there, as well as potential protests start to resume again?
I would say in a couple of weeks, you're going to see a significant economic pressure, really just a sudden increase in economic pressure they're going to have to deal with on the oil front, gasoline front. And then in a matter of a couple of months, you're going to see major frictions within the political figures. I wouldn't say a couple of weeks to see frictions and protests, but I would say in a couple of weeks, they're going to run out of oil storage capacity. They're going to have to face gasoline shortages. Every time they had gasoline shortages, or they had to increase the price on gasoline, they had significant domestic protest. So it's a clock that is moving really fast. We don't know when the trigger is we're gonna see that trigger as far as protests and frictions. But in a matter of couple of weeks to a couple of months, they're gonna have to really either make a deal or be on the verge of kind of collapse.
Yeah, and this is a country that was already in dire economic hardships even prior to this war beginning, which is one of the reasons why we saw those mass protests at the start of the year. Maleki, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it.